Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Not the Girl Next Door. I'm your host, Meg Reynolds, and I am so excited to say that this is the first episode in the new studio. And while the studio's not done yet, she's under construction, if you will, I am so excited for this new chapter in my life. Obviously, you heard on last week's episode of the podcast, me and Hannah closed out the final chapter of living at our apartment, 218. And in true fashion, because it would be my fucking luck, the video got corrupted. So we had no video for that episode, but that's okay. A lot of sentimental clips still to come from that episode. And just, what a perfect way to close out that chapter in my life. And don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of podcast clips that you will see coming soon. I have a backlog of episodes that need to get through. And the reason I haven't been able to get through them all is just because what the fuck has my life been these past 3 months now since I've been in business? Let's see, June to July, July to August, 3. I can't do math. Math's not my strong suit. Y'all know that. It's really weird to go through so much change in 1 year. And something I've said on this podcast before is change is the only thing that's ever constant in life. And you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because let's be real, change, there's nothing comfortable about change. There's nothing comfortable about growth. But I really think I have never been a more happy and positive person than when I fell in love with self-growth and when I fell in love with change and when I fell in love with evolving, learning new things and new skills. And I feel like that's truly when life will never be boring. And I'm just really proud of the progress that I've made, how far I've come, all the new things I've gotten to experience, the new cities I've gotten to travel to. And this is just a chapter in my life that would not have existed had I not been laid off. And I never thought I would be saying that getting laid off was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, but it truly is. And these past 3 months of my life have given me a lot more insight and clarity into myself and who I want to be and where I want to go, and recognizing the importance of taking chances and having courage to do these things. And something else too that, I've had to get really comfortable with is, being not independent, because I've always been pretty independent, but just being alone. And obviously part of my whole podcasting journey has been this journey of learning to love being alone. But this is different in the sense of I don't really get to see my friends very often. And, it takes a lot more planning on my part to see people. And just being okay with people falling off. Obviously somebody like me who is an anxious attacher, that's a really hard thing to do, is to let go and see who still is around. And these past couple of months have been very enlightening of the people that are going to stick around and the people that are my true friends. And I feel like as the older I get, and this is a common theme for everybody in our lives, the older we get, the smaller our circle gets. And I think that's really important to actually have that small circle because you're able to form more meaningful connections and friendships. And another new development for me too is I started dating again recently, and I promised you guys that I would always be open and honest about that. And you probably have heard me and Hannah talking about it in last week's episode if you were listening. And somebody who's kind of, come into my life recently, it's not Spaghetti Boy. If you heard that episode, it's not Spaghetti Boy. Spaghetti Boy's great, but he's out of the picture. And it's not the Arby's guy. Arby's guy has not come back in my life either. I actually love how Hannah, my friends give the nicknames to these men. I feel like you should let your friends nickname your men. Anyways, we'll think on it. I'll consult my friends and get back to you guys on a nickname for him. But things are going really well with him, and I don't know where it's going. And we actually had a conversation of just we both agreed we're in crazy places in our lives where a lot's going on, and I have to be really honest with myself because it's, with how crazy my schedule is, of course I want a relationship. That's always the end goal, but do I even really have time to be a good partner to somebody? I don't know. And I don't know what that relationship would look like. But what I do know is that him and I have had so many conversations, and he has given me such hope that there are still good guys out there, because the way he speaks about relationships and life and the things he's been through and his past is just so open and honest and refreshing. And I've never had that with a guy before. So even if him and I, it goes nowhere and doesn't work out, like, it kind of is giving me this hope again of, there are still good guys out there, because I think it is so easy to get wrapped up in, the despair of all guys are the same and no one wants anything serious and all that jazz. But it's really exciting when somebody comes into your life and gives you that hope. And don't get me wrong, I am still terrified to let somebody in again. And I told him this. Him and I had a really good conversation about both of our past relationships and things we've been through. And I said to him, I was like, for as much work as I've done on myself and, as much healing as I've done, the idea of letting somebody back in is still terrifying to me. And the idea of falling in love again is still terrifying to me because, as you guys know, the way my last relationship ended, it left me questioning if he ever loved me. And that's a really scary and vulnerable place to be. And again, then getting into a next relationship of you're questioning everything and questioning if you can trust and believe somebody and questioning if you can trust your own instincts. And I don't have answers on how to navigate that because I'm still navigating that myself. But what I do know is that's where it's important to learn when it's your gut, learn when it's anxiety, but also follow your heart while listening to your head at the same time. I don't know if that really makes sense. I think nowadays the anxious attachment is quick to get thrown out there, and it's quick to be thrown out as a label of, oh, well, you're just anxious attachment, like that's your anxious attachment being triggered. And it isn't always anxious attachment. Sometimes it is genuinely your gut is telling you something, and it is so important to listen to that. And the reason I'm talking about all of these things is kind of leading into today's episode, the heart of what I wanted to talk about. And I'm definitely pretty late discussing this subject, but with this episode, like, I wanted to do it thoughtfully and with a lot of intention, and I didn't want to rush it. And obviously the past month of my life has especially been a whirlwind and crazy between moving and everything like that. So I haven't really had time to sit down and record this episode. So here I am doing it now, a little bit late, but better late than never. And I wanted to talk about It Ends With Us, the movie that finally came out. If you guys have been listening to the podcast for a while, I've talked about the book before on this podcast, my thoughts on it and all of that stuff, and just talked about some other great books to read if you are interested in those topics and just those kinds of storylines. And I have a lot of criticisms and opinions on this movie, but I think the biggest issue that I saw personally surrounding not only the marketing for the movie, but the discourse for the movie was the lack of people sharing resources. Because let's be real, at the end of the day, It Ends With Us is a movie about domestic violence. And before I get into my final, to the thoughts on the movie, I wanted to make sure that I remind people that there are resources out there if you are experiencing domestic violence. There is the national hotline that you can call or text. You are able to call 800-799-7233, or you can text BEGIN to 88788, and that is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I wanted to remind people too that 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of domestic violence in a relationship by the age of 16. I am unfortunately one of those women who has experienced some form of domestic violence or sexual assault numerous times in multiple relationships. But I am sitting here today a stronger woman than I ever have been before. And I am stronger, and not because, I don't want to say because of those things, but I want to say I am stronger in spite of those situations that I was put in. And I was put in those situations by men I was supposed to be able to love and trust. And that at its core is what It Ends With Us should have been marketed as. It should never have been marketed as a rom-com. It should not have been romanticized the way that it was. Women and just family, people in general, should just not have been able to walk into that movie theater thinking they were going to see another rom-com of the year. And the fact, and I understand that people are like, oh, they should have read the book or whatever. Like, no, it's a movie. People don't always read the book before they read the movie. You should have been able to know what this story was about, and you didn't. And I would love to say that I was surprised by that, but I wasn't really, because if we look at the way Colleen Hoover marketed the book, she tried to do a coloring book. There was nail polish lines. Like, the whole book itself was also romanticized. And I'll touch on the idea of romanticizing DV in a minute, because I think there would have been a way to do it that would have enhanced the story. But the first thing that I want to say about the marketing in this movie is that I get it. Look, like, I'm a reader, I'm an aspiring author, but I was also a film major. I do branding and social media marketing for a living. Domestic violence isn't sexy. It's not a sexy topic to talk about. It's not a sexy topic to market. So, of course, if you're the investor of this movie, you don't want to market it in a way that you think could hurt its sales. I don't believe in that, but unfortunately, that is the way corporate America thinks and capitalism thinks. So, of course, the movie was going to not be marketed the way that it should have been. Of course, it was going to be romanticized. And in terms of Blake Lively, I was so disappointed in her especially. Don't fucking launch a hair care line around this movie. That just was so distasteful and disappointing to me, especially just considering she championed herself as a woman's advocate for so many years. And this movie, I think the way she did the press really surprised a lot of people. And it was also different from how she normally did press for movies. And I think it was overall just a PR nightmare marketing failure. Obviously, if you look at the box office numbers, the movie did great. It's a phrase as old as time. Sex sells. Sex sells. Domestic violence isn't sexy. But what is sexy is thinking you're going to a movie about two hot people that are falling in love and they have this tumultuous relationship and then they make it work in the end, or they don't, whatever. Or she's, it's the love triangle thing. Like, that's sexy. That sells. And when it comes to romanticizing domestic violence, I'm not saying it's okay. What I do understand, though, and I don't know if this was ever the intention or a thought, but this is where my mind went, is, when you are in those situations, we do tend to romanticize our partner. We romanticize who we want them to be, who we think they could be, maybe the person they once were when we first got together. And you hold on to that idea and you romanticize them and you put them on a pedestal and you just hope and pray that one day they will wake up and be that person you want that they were again, or the person that you want them to be. That, I think, is the only way DV and this movie should have been romanticized. And I think if they had came at it from that lens, it would have been a very different conversation. The only thing that this movie got right was her leaving in the end. And obviously that's, I think, the only thing the book got right. There was a lot of things I think that the movie left out that would have given so much insight and clarity. It really felt to me, this movie wanted to almost brush the topic of domestic violence under the rug. And there were so many things they left out about Ryle's past and his character and other little triggers that would have given people, I think, a lot more insight into who he is. It kind of felt like the domestic violence and those scenes were an afterthought. Now, I understand they made it purposefully look like accidents at first, and then they revealed that they weren't. And I loved that choice. I thought that was an incredible choice of how we, in our minds, tell ourselves we're being crazy, dramatic, whatever. But I don't think they did enough with it. I don't think it was, at the forefront enough. Again, it just felt like rushed, those parts of like, okay, yeah, they're happy in love. Don't look at this part. No, we're just going to skip past this. Oh, they're happy and in love again. I know there was a lot of drama between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively on set. A movie that was supposed to be so empowering for women turned into what it was. In fact, I don't think the aftermath was empowering at all. I think so much time, again, got focused on this feud between them, Blake's hair care line. Like, nothing was really done for women who were survivors. And I did appreciate the way Justin Baldoni approached press of saying this movie is for the women. Like, he did not want it to focus on himself at all. Was that enough? I don't know. I wish, there's a lot of things that I think this movie could and should have done differently. What I will say is that just like last summer, how I said you should take your man to go see the Barbie movie, I think this is still, because I did still enjoy the movie. I do still think this is an important movie for women to watch with their partners. Because once again, and I think it is a movie that it'll be very telling about a man, how he views this movie, his reactions to it. And I think it will give you a lot of insight on whether or not this is a relationship you should stay in or you're safe to stay in. If you're questioning those kinds of things, like, I know when I went into this movie, one, the lack of trigger warnings was insane to me. But I felt incredibly triggered by this movie, and I knew what I was walking into, so I was fully prepared emotionally. But it just brought me back to so many dark places, because I can relate with this idea of it ends with us, of wanting to end that generational trauma and that generational pain. I wish that's something I wish the movie covered more, was the abuse too that Lily's mom went through and that Lily went through as a kid. Again, I think that was a part that was unfortunately left out. I don't think it should have been. I think it would have, again, given a lot of insight and clarity to the character development. My mom chose a Ryle. Now, he never, as far as I know, my dad never hit my mother. But there were a lot of things that happened that I realized I was repeating the same pattern. And so I chose somebody who was a Ryle, in a way. And again, he never hit me. I will put that on the record. He never hit me. He loved to remind me that he never hit me. He literally said one time to me, "You need to quit acting like I was such a bad guy. It's not like I ever hit you." And that sentence will forever stick with me, because it's just a reminder of, like, just because you don't hit your girlfriend does not make you a good man or a good partner. And that is such, like, if you think that is the bar of being a good man, you have a lot of fucking growing up to do. But something I realized in therapy was, part of why I stayed in that relationship for so long, aside from how I felt about myself and things I hadn't dealt with, a big component of why I stayed in that relationship was because I saw my father in him. And that is so fucked up to say, that because I couldn't fix my dad, I was trying to fix my boyfriend. And when we came to that conclusion in therapy, this is like over a year ago at this point that this therapy session happened, but like it very much, that conversation came to the forefront of my mind when I watched this movie. It hit me like a ton of bricks all over again. And so for any woman who is considering leaving a man like this, and if you think that, oh, but he's never physically hit me, again, go watch Made, that series on Netflix. And I know I did an episode on that as well with my friend Dale. That's another heartbreaking story where she never once was physically assaulted by her partner. Yet that was still an incredibly abusive relationship. So if you're somebody who's considering leaving a toxic partner and you don't know if it's the right decision or not, you need to ask yourself, am I okay with being loved like this for the rest of my life? If nothing ever changes, if this person never changes, am I okay with accepting this kind of love for the rest of my life? And the thing is, I knew in my heart when I was in my last relationship that I wouldn't be, and that I didn't want this for the rest of my life, but I was just so hopeful that he would become the man I knew he could be, and he just never did. And the thing is, too, is I can't even wish ill will on him. I think there was a point in time, maybe I did because I was so angry, but now I'm so detached from that. I mean, it was 3 years ago at this point. But the thing is, I hope he changes. And I said this to him too. Because he once said to me that I knew he was a good partner. And I said to him, I was like, no, you're not. I said, I think you have the potential to be a good partner. And I hope for the sake of your future partner and your future children that you go to therapy and you heal from these things and you become that partner for them, but you will never be that partner for me. And I still stand by that. I hope that he heals. And I hope he never makes the next girl feel the way I felt in that relationship. I hope he never gaslights her. I hope he never yells at her. I hope he never makes her lose herself in that relationship. And I hope I never hear a damn thing about it. So things I thought the movie did do right. One, I did really like that they aged the characters up. It felt more relatable to me that the characters were aged up. I do think maybe they were slightly aged too old. But maybe that was just because they wanted to cast the movie. Colleen Hoover wanted to cast the movie around Blake Lively. I don't really know. But I did like that the characters were aged up slightly. And the reason for that is I think it makes the movie more relatable in the sense of like, you're never too old to experience this kind of relationship. And like any woman can be subjected to this, young, old. However, like you can meet a man like this and it will destroy you. Something else I liked that about aging the characters up, I liked that they cut out the Dory part and the Ellen part. Like those parts always just felt very cheesy and inauthentic to me in the book. I didn't personally care for them. I love that they replaced them with other touches that connected Lily to Atlas throughout the years, and that Atlas still played a part in Lily's life. Like she was wearing his jacket in the one rooftop scene. And I do like I said earlier, I do like that they made the DV scenes feel like look like accidents, because I think it was a really powerful image of how we can be blinded by love and we will make excuses for the person we love and we'll convince ourselves that we're being crazy and we're just, our mind will play tricks on us. Because I know for far too long in my last relationship, I did that I downplayed situations and even blocked situations out of my mind. Like literally my best friend Lorelai, she was on the phone once and overheard something he said. And months later, I went back home and we were talking about it. I was like, what are you talking about? He never said that. And she was like, Meg, I was literally on the phone and he did say that. And I just couldn't remember it. Like, we will absolutely just, we'll gaslight ourselves. And if we love this person so much and we're so blinded by our love for them. And I think that's really sad. But something I have kind of found comfort in, and I hope maybe you guys can too, is that I know I have such a big heart and I know I have so much love to give somebody. And with how much love I've given to the wrong men, imagine how much love I could give to the right partner. Imagine how happy I could be with the right partner when I thought I was so happy with the wrong ones. Imagine how good of a relationship I could have with somebody who reciprocates that love that I have to give. And that makes me excited to fall in love again one day. I don't know when that'll happen. I don't know. It could be 10 years down the line. But what I do know is that hope of falling in love again someday and the excitement about falling in love again and having all those firsts again is enough to keep going when I remember how much love I gave to the wrong people in my life. And maybe that sounds dumb and maybe I sound like just like a stupid, hopeless romantic and silly girl, whatever. But I would rather be like this than be who I was in the past of feeling like I was unworthy of love and I'm ugly and no one's ever going to fall for me. Like the things that I used to tell myself, because that's not the case. I think the biggest thing I've learned about relationships too sometimes is it's just dumb luck who we meet and fall in love with. I do believe in an element of, the invisible string and all of these other romantic theories, but sometimes at the end of the day, it's just fucking dumb luck. It really is. Right place, right time, whatever you want to call it. Like, dumb luck. There's a lot of great people who are still fucking single and genuinely want love and would be wonderful partners. And there's a lot of shitty people who are in relationships with people that they probably don't deserve out of pure fucking dumb luck. Says nothing about me. And that's the other thing too, is when people sit there and they're like, oh, how is this person in a relationship and I'm not? Like, don't equate your self-worth on whether or not you're in a relationship, and don't hold your self-worth on whether somebody else who you perceive as being less than is in a relationship. Like, that's just such a waste of time and energy. The biggest disappointment surrounding the marketing and the movie the biggest disappointment for me and surrounding the marketing of the movie and the lack of resources and the lack of trigger warnings was really when it came down to the sexual assault scene in the film. Like I said, my last relationship, I was never hit, but there is something even more cynical about a person who thinks it's funny to joke about your pain. And in my last relationship, he thought it would be funny to joke that he sexually assaulted me in my sleep. And I wish I was kidding when I said that. And so when I saw this scene in the movie, it brought back all those feelings and emotions for me of when I was actually sexually assaulted, when my partner thought it would be funny to joke that he did that to me. And to this day, part of me wonders if he thought about doing it, if he tried, if he did. I don't know. I can't even really let myself go down that far of a rabbit hole because it's just so heartbreaking anytime I think about it. But what I do know is this movie had so much potential and could have been so empowering. And I think they were trying to have a Barbie moment with, you know, the whole thing of wear your florals, come watch the movie with your girls. Like, I understand what they were trying to do, but it just fell so short because the topics of the Barbie movie and the topics of this movie are vastly different. And when you have a movie that is literally depicting domestic violence and sexual assault, you need to tell your audience that in advance. They had a chance to make this such an empowering moment, and it fell short because I think it got wrapped up in the cultural phenomenon that they were trying to make it, and just this girly pop fun moment. Because let's be real, this is the year, this past year has been like the year for girly pops. You've had the Barbie movie, the pop girls are back, like so much like fun feminine energy has been about. And I think this movie was trying to capitalize on that, and it just really fell short because this was not the time nor place for that energy. I think it could have had its moment in this space, but it really just missed the mark for me. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's a good film. Justin Baldoni, I think, is a fantastic director. And something else that makes me sad about this movie too is like thinking about the potential it could have been had it not been seemingly hijacked by Blake Lively. The original, what was supposed to be the original movie poster, got leaked, and it had both Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively on it. And I think it would have been a much better poster than what we got, because again, the poster we got, it gives that rom-com vibe. The poster that was set to be released, it's not, it doesn't outright depict domestic violence, but I think it's a lot more solemn and a lot more fitting of the tone. I think there's a world in which they could have combined the two, and that also is unfortunate to think of, like, just what could this movie have been if the two of them worked together and created a cinematic masterpiece. That makes me so sad too. And as somebody who is a creative in both the writing and the film world, you know, it just is a reminder of why collaboration is so important, and why being able to have an open dialogue with your fellow co-creators is so important. So you don't end up with shit like this that is a flop and the beef overshadows what is actually supposed to be. Especially for a movie that was so important and came about a time in which women's health and women's reproductive rights and just women's rights in general are really under attack. And this movie just had so much potential, and it really missed the mark for me. But I mean, why are we really surprised? Fucking, it's Colleen Hoover. If you want other stories that are, you know, in this realm and are just as powerful and don't have, you know, the tea or drama surrounding them, if you will, definitely watch Made on Netflix. That series still is a great one to me, and it's based on a book. Another one for me is that I have talked about on the podcast before is The Way I Used to Be. And the sequel, The Way I Am Now, actually came out. It's still sitting in my TBR list. I think I've mentioned this book on the podcast before. It's still sitting in my TBR list. I got a lot of books I got to go through, and I've kind of been in my fun smutty era. Sorry. I've just needed some lighthearted things to read on the treadmill, but there's nothing worse. Okay, this is weird tangent. I'm so sorry for this, but there's nothing worse than when you're on the treadmill at the gym and you're reading a little spicy book and one of those scenes comes up and you can just feel yourself instantly get red. I'm like, I feel like everybody knows what I'm reading and I need to just slam this book shut and like run the fuck out of here. That's always fun. But back to seriousness, you know, this movie, I think, take what you need from it and leave what you don't. And whatever your criticisms are around it, I think there is still some goodness to be had from it. But yeah, something I want to leave you guys with is, like I said, the biggest thing about whether or not you should stay in this relationship is ask yourself if you're okay with being loved like this for the rest of your life. I think that advice could really save you from a lot of things. If you are a woman who is experiencing domestic violence, I encourage you, if you can, to reach out to that hotline. I know I've never, thankfully, been in a situation where I've had to flee domestic violence like that. I thankfully do not have children that I need to think of in this situation. But if you are a woman who does and you are somehow listening to this podcast, I just want you to know you are not alone. There are resources out there for you, like the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Search women's shelters in your area. I know Nashville has a lot of great resources for women experiencing domestic violence. And at the end of the day, too, DM the podcast page. I don't know what I can offer other than words of encouragement and support. But if that's what you need to take the courage to leave your situation, please feel free to reach out to me in any situation of whether you need relationship advice or you're experiencing DV or just a toxic relationship or you just need a girlfriend. Please, I love when you guys reach out to the podcast page asking for advice. It seriously always makes my day to know that you guys want to interact with me. So that, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, do not be afraid to, at the very least, take that first step of reaching out to the podcast page, and I'm happy to do what I can. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to leave these kinds of situations. It is so much easier said than done, and I don't think that's talked about enough as well. But the fear really can keep you there, and it can keep you in that place. So I know this episode kind of went all over it was like a roller coaster of emotions, this episode, but I hope you got something from it. I hope you guys are still with me. If you are, thank you. I hope you guys are just as excited as I am for this next chapter in my life. I have so many wonderful things coming. More guests are coming from the new studio. The studio will be hopefully finished soon, and I plan on doing a video all about that and taking you guys on that journey of decorating and stuff. It's going to be pretty similar, but we just got a big, nice, white, comfy couch now instead of a little white chair. Plenty of space for guests. And yeah, that's all from me on this week of Not the Girl Next Door. Wherever you're listening, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Share this with your friends. And if you're not following the podcast on Instagram already, it's at Not the Girl Next Door podcast, which, like, if you're an avid listener of this podcast, you really should be following. And I will see you guys next week for another episode. Bye for now.